We are joined right now by former Secretary of State and NCA Director Mike Pompeo. And Secretary Pompeo, we got this brand new report from The Intercept. It shows that, and we've got the document itself, the login, that despite the canceling of the Disinformation Governance Board, the work of DHS not to police misinformation from overseas or bad actors, whether it's the Chinese Communist Party or Russia, but domestic U.S. citizens, that it's growing. What is the Biden administration trying to do here behind the scenes to the American people?
Well, I think it's twofold. First, your point about behind the visibility for the American people is exactly right. They made, then they created the Disinformation Board. It got blown up. Civil libertarians, conservatives, people from a broad spectrum said this is a terrible idea. They backed off of it publicly, but apparently have kept doing this. And Jay said earlier, I think that's not a surprise. They have tried to take down, to censor, to move out of the marketplace of ideas conservative thought for a long time. They've used, you all know this, they've tried to use the IRS, they've used the FBI, now they're using DHS to police information to stifle debate so they can project their own progressive view of the world. This is deeply dangerous. The fact that they're now doing this behind the scenes when they claim they aren't doing it anymore is even more troubling.
Yeah, I mean, the access point is live through Facebook, and we actually have the portal's live. The government has direct access to it. We don't even know the extent of how many government actors. We know you have to have some kind of government email address to log in, but it just seems very dangerous because there's so much pressure then on these companies who get immunity from lawsuits under federal, the Communications Decency Act in Section 230 there, that if someone from the FBI goes in and says, okay, hey, don't let this talk on one of the issues with the withdrawal of Afghanistan, well, we need to dethrottle that content or criticism. I mean, this is the United States of America. You can oppose a war, you can support a war, you can support a withdrawal, you can oppose a withdrawal, you can criticize it. It's just some of these topics that they listed as concerns, it just seems such a dangerous attack on our freedom of speech.
Oh, it truly is. And our founders could probably not have imagined Facebook or Twitter, but they knew the danger of government throttling information, taking information down, protecting voices from being heard. They understood it. There is this long thread over 240 plus years now, and the Biden administration has uniquely tried to undermine the capacity for all of the voices to be heard. They want to push it aside. They want to use government power combined with the incredible capabilities of these businesses. To your point about the portal, that is real-time capacity to shut down information without any oversight any place inside of the system. This is deeply dangerous. It's something that the Biden administration should not be permitted to do. I'm confident there'll be lawsuits filed as a result of this, but more importantly, I hope when we get a Congress here in January that has the capacity to conduct oversight, that they will look into what they were doing when they got rid of the Disinformation Governance Board, but disinformation governance was something they were continuing to do every day.
Yeah, and there was a shift. Obviously, when President Biden came into office, and this report outlines that shift, and the Inspector General's report outlines that shift, that initially this was directed, I'm sure, under the Trump administration that you served in. Any kind of initiatives like this would have been directed at foreign adversaries, trying to, again, meddle, if they're trying to meddle in our elections or cause any kind of issues in the United States. And it's, I think, still there. You have to do it with a lot of, again, protection because of the laws we have in place. But then they had this complete shift to focus on the domestic audience almost completely. And they took people off of terror teams. And this is the IG report, off the teams that are focusing on Al-Qaeda and other Islamic terror groups, and put them on these domestic teams to shift there. To me, we're literally the week from Election Day. And the idea that all of these topics could be used to dethrottle a message of someone who's a political opponent of Joe Biden or the Democrat Party.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that they have done it. Your point about the appropriate role, so I was the CIA director, along with other external agencies. We tried to get it right to try and keep bad actors from putting misinformation to our system. By the way, frankly, less about politics, but more about disinformation to take down terror plots and the like to keep people safe. But to do this on a domestic political debate, to do this on the issues that are most important to the American people, and to stifle, throttle back, discard the views of U.S. citizens, whatever they may be, those that agree with you or me or disagree with you and me, is so inappropriate, so unlawful, so indecent that it does begin to undermine the republic. And so your point is very well taken. They've now turned their attention to this idea of domestic terrorism when, A, the threat from abroad remains, and B, to do this to American citizens, to stifle debate inside of our country, is deeply un-American.
And we know it's active as enough because of the report, because it lists also U.S. involvement in Ukraine. I can't count the number of times, Secretary Pompeo, we've discussed that on this broadcast, and it's on Facebook, it's on all these platforms, and we're just having honest, open discussions because American people, it's a shifting battlefield, changing battlefield. It's been a lot longer conflict than people thought it might be, and it impacts us at home. It impacts our European allies, and the idea that the discussions around that, if you're not right in line with wherever the Biden administration is that day, which, by the way, as you know, Secretary, they're shifting on it too all the time. So if you're not on the party line message, suddenly you can't get your message out on these platforms, regardless of the money you're putting behind it.
Think about this. We've seen now they want to not talk about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, this terrible debacle that had 13 Americans killed. Not permitted to speak about this. Ukraine, support for it, against it. Lots of different views, by the way, across the political spectrum. There's those who are for it and against it on the left and on the right. These are exactly the kinds of topics that we should be encouraging a robust debate about. I saw, too, they were throttling back information about conversations on racial justice. Goodness gracious, there's Supreme Court cases in front of the United States Supreme Court today where they're talking about affirmative action and its appropriateness. These are exactly the kinds of debates that the American people should be having, and clearly the Biden administration believes that it is losing the argument, it is losing the debate, and has chosen to use its power, governmental power, to throttle back the voices that oppose them. I can't tell you how troubling that is.
Political question for you. Final question today, Secretary Pompeo. I know you're traveling the country on behalf of conservative candidates. You've been all over the states. Now we're exactly the week from Election Day, and we're seeing polls favor, going in the Republican direction. Obviously, it seems to me like at this point, with these final 7 days, as someone you've been an elected official as well, that this is all about turnout and getting that message out. But if there were like a few states that you're watching that you think our audience should be watching as well.
Sure, New York, the governor's race. There are congressional races in Connecticut and Oregon, the Senate race in Washington, places that, goodness, Jordan, you and I even 6 months ago might have said probably not possible. Yep. The American people can see the failure of Democrat control of the House and the Senate and of the White House, and I think they're about to change them all. To your point, I encourage everybody to get out, exercise their First Amendment freedoms, exactly what we've been talking about. Go vote. They can't throttle your vote. Get out there, cast your ballot, make sure your friends do the same, and I am confident the American people are going to reclaim the important things that matter most to us, and we can begin to conduct oversight on precisely what we've been speaking about this morning.
That is so important, Secretary Pompeo. Thank you for joining us.